The river knows my name. The sun blazed mercilessly over the village of Nzuri, its golden rays turning the once lush fields into dry, cracked earth. The river Nyoka, the lifeblood of the village, had dwindled to a thin, reluctant stream. Children no longer played by its banks, and the laughter that once echoed through the village had been replaced by whispers of despair. Zoe sat on a rock near the river's edge, her feet dangling into the tepid water. Her heart ached as she watched the once mighty current struggle against the dry season. The stories her grandmother told her about the river spirit swirled in her mind. The river knows our names, her grandmother had said, her voice soft yet firm. It carries our stories, our hopes, and our fears. But if we forget its power, it will forget us too. Zoe's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her mother's voice calling her home. She hurried back to find her younger brother, Jabari, lying on a straw mat, his small frame frail and shivering despite the heat. The healer says only the water from the river source can cure him, her mother whispered, her voice trembling. But the source is far, too far. Zoe's gaze hardened. She had heard of the river source, shrouded in mystery and guarded by ancient spirits. No one from the village had dared to venture there in generations. But as she looked at her brother's pale face, a surge of determination filled her. "I'll find it," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Her mother gasped. "No, Zoe. It's dangerous. The spirits." "I have to," Zoe interrupted. "If the river knows my name, it will guide me." That night, under the cover of darkness, Zoe packed a small bag with essentials, a gourd for water, dried cassava, and the amulet her grandmother had given her, a small stone shaped like a coiled serpent. She whispered a promise to Jabari as he slept and slipped out of the hut. The path upstream was treacherous, winding through dense forests and over jagged rocks. The river, now barely a trickle, seemed to guide her, its soft murmur growing louder as she ventured deeper into the wilderness. On the third day, she reached the edge of the forbidden forest. The villagers spoke of strange voices and shadows that roamed the woods, but Zoe stilled herself and stepped inside. The air was thick and humid, the silence oppressive. As she walked, she felt eyes watching her, though she saw no one. "Who dares enter the forest of the forgotten?" A voice boomed suddenly, making Zoe freeze. "I am Zoe of Nzuri village," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I seek the source of the river Nyoka to save my brother." A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and cloaked in vines. Its face was obscured, but its eyes glowed like embers. "Many have come before you," the figure said, "but none have returned. What makes you worthy?" Zoe held up her amulet. "The river knows my name. It carries my story. I will not turn back." The figure studied her for a moment before stepping aside. "Then prove yourself." As Zoe pressed on, she encountered a series of trials. The first was a bridge made of twisted roots hanging over a deep chasm. The river whispered beneath her, its voice faint but encouraging. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge, her heart pounding with every creak and sway. She made it across, her resolve growing stronger. The second trial was a field of mirages. Zoe saw visions of her family, her village restored to its former glory, and Jabari healthy and laughing. The illusions tugged at her heart, but she knew they were not real. She closed her eyes and walked forward, refusing to be swayed. The final trial was a riddle posed by a serpent coiled around a tree. Its emerald eyes gleamed as it spoke. "I am the beginning and the end, the source and the path. Without me, you cannot survive." "What am I?" "The river," Zoe answered without hesitation. The serpent uncoiled and slithered away, revealing a hidden path. The path led Zoe to a clearing where the river's source should have been. Instead, she found a massive stone dam blocking the water. Standing before it was Owendo, a shape-shifting guardian who radiated power. His form shifted between a man and a crocodile, his eyes glowing like molten gold. "Why have you come?" Orwendo demanded, his voice like thunder. "I seek the heart of the Nyoka to save my brother and my village," Zay said. Orwendo laughed, a deep, menacing sound. "Your people have forgotten the river spirit. They take without giving, pollute without care. Why should I help you?" Zay stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "I cannot speak for the past, but I promise to honor the river and teach my village to do the same. Let me prove my worth." Orwendo considered her words. "Very well. If you can withstand the weight of the river's heart, it is yours." He extended his hand, and a glowing stone appeared, a brilliant sapphire pulsing with life. As Zoe reached for it, she felt its immense weight, as if it carried the hopes and burdens of generations. Her knees buckled, but she refused to let go. She thought of Jabari, of her village, and of the river that had always been their lifeline. With a final surge of strength, she lifted the stone. The dam shattered, and water rushed forth, restoring the river to its former glory. Zari returned to Nzuri to find the villagers gathered by the riverbank, their faces filled with awe as the water flowed once more. She knelt by Jabari's side and poured a few drops of water into his mouth. His eyes fluttered open, and he smiled weakly. "The river knows my name," he whispered. The villagers listened as Zoe recounted her journey. They pledged to honor the river, offering prayers and gifts to its spirit. Zoe's bravery became a legend, her name forever intertwined with the river's story. Years later, Zoe sat by the river, now teeming with life. The water sparkled under the sun, its gentle mama carrying her name and the promise of renewal. She smiled, knowing the river would always remember. As days turned into weeks, Zoe's tale spread beyond the boundaries of Nzuri village. Traders carried her story to neighboring settlements, and travelers came to see the restored river Nyoka, which now flowed with renewed vigor. The elders of Nzuri, humbled by Zoe's bravery, called for a grand council to discuss how they could maintain harmony with the river spirit. During the council, Zoe stood before the village, her voice steady and strong. "The river is not just water," she said. "It is life, memory, and a part of who we are. If we take from it, we must also give back. The river will always remember." The elders nodded, and a decision was made to create a yearly ceremony, the Nyoka Festival, where the villagers would offer their gratitude to the river. On the first day of the festival, they would plant trees along its banks, ensuring its protection for generations to come. Zoe's amulet, the small stone shaped like a coiled serpent, became a sacred symbol of the river spirit. It was enshrined in a special hut near the riverbank, where villagers could visit to seek guidance or offer prayers. As the years passed, the river continued to flourish, and the village prospered. Crops grew tall, and children laughed by the river's edge once more. Zoe, now older and wiser, often sat by the river, reflecting on the journey that had changed her life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Orwendo appeared before her once again. This time, his form was less menacing, his crocodile features softened. "You have done well, Zoe," he said, his voice like the rumble of distant thunder. "But the river is eternal, and so too must be your vigilance. Are you and your people prepared to protect it always?" Zoe rose to her feet, meeting his gaze. "We are," she said. "The river taught us that balance is the essence of life. We will not forget." Orwendo nodded, his golden eyes glinting with approval. "Then you shall have my blessing. But remember, the river is a mirror. It reflects what is given to it. If your people falter, it will show no mercy." With that, he vanished, leaving behind a ripple in the air. As Zoe grew older, she began to sense that her connection to the river was deeper than she had ever imagined. On quiet nights, she would hear whispers in the water, fragments of stories from distant lands. The river, she realized, carried not only the names and stories of her village but of all who lived along its banks. Driven by curiosity, they decided to follow the river downstream, to see where it led and to learn the stories of the people it touched. The villagers were reluctant to let her go, but they assured them that her journey was not just for herself but for the river and its future. As she traveled, they encountered new villages and diverse cultures. Each community had its own relationship with the river, some revered it as a god, while others saw it as a mere resource. Zoe shared her story, inspiring them to respect and protect the river. In turn, she learned from them, carrying their wisdom back to Nzuri. Decades later, Zoe, now an elder, returned to Nzuri for the Nayoka festival. Her hair, once as dark as the river at night, was now streaked with silver, and her steps were slower, but her spirit was as vibrant as ever. As the villagers gathered to celebrate, Zee stood by the river, her reflection shimmering in its depths. She felt a strange pull, a sense that the river was calling her. She knelt by the water's edge, her hands cupping its cool embrace. "The river knows my name," she whispered, a smile playing on her lips. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Zee passed away peacefully in her sleep. The villagers mourned her loss but found comfort in knowing that she had become one with the river she loved so dearly. The next morning, as the sun rose, the villagers gathered by the river to pay their respects. To their astonishment, the water sparkled more brightly than ever, its surface reflecting the light like liquid gold. A gentle breeze carried Zoe's name through the air, as if the river itself was whispering it. From that day on, Zoe was remembered not only as the girl who saved the river but as its eternal guardian. Her story became a part of the river's flow, carried to every corner of the land, a reminder that the river knows all names and that its spirit lives on in those who honor it. The end.